All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, Heath doesn't have a camera again, but we're going to bring up our own page and the comments section because we have a super long comment from a new commenter. And we're going to break it down in real time because I haven't read all the way through it, but it's kind of a book. And hopefully we can get through it in less than an hour. Um, so I'll bring that up, and Heath is going to use his reading skills to take us through because it's a mix. It's because it's on our, so this for backdrop, it's on our balancing the scales how the masculine is failing episode. Because we had been talking about the feminizing of wokeism and everything, and
Hmm.
then we did an episode about the masculine, and this Jason 55 Ward uh again, he wrote us a book. We're going to go through it.
Yeah. Um, and I hadn't looked at this yet. I do have something pulled up I might share, but the first section is about Fuentes, and you can very quickly and easily find montages of him saying not just awful but stupid things. That to
Mhm.
me, that's what is so infuriating. Is it's not just that, you know, that's gross, that's objectively wrong. It's dumb. Is
Mhm.
like I said last time, when we
Yeah,
when we
but the problem
teased
is with
this.
the interwebs is the more dumb the better.
Yes.
When you're trying to be successful, because
Yes.
we say a lot of dumb things personally, but also we try not to. And I don't think he tries not to. I think he's
I,
like, that is really dumb and it's gonna be
mhm.
make me famous.
So
You know?
what I analogized it to when we teased this on our last Wheel of Time episode is Jimmy Carr had this great line about Andrew Tate, that Andrew Tate is a 13-year-old's vision of what a real man is. The way he talks, the way he behaves, the way he films himself, his whole aura is, a caricature. It's not real masculinity. It is a caricature. It is what a 13-year-old who clearly doesn't know what masculinity is. He's just trying to figure it out. And that's why when we talked about him months ago, I brought up that clip of, and you talked about, because you watched uh brain fart. What was the title of the Netflix show? Adolescence.
Yeah, adolescence,
Um
yeah.
and so that was in the news, and that was big, and that was why it was all coming back. And I'd stumbled across this clip um, of Dr. Phil talking to some teenage boys about Andrew Tate. And all of them knew who he was. And I think more than half of them watched his content regularly, or at least some of the time. And that's the part that blew me away, because I was like, oh crap, I knew, I was aware that he existed. I didn't know that he was that popular amongst teenage boys, and that's scary. And Fuentes is of a similar ilk. So if Andrew Tate is the physical side of the faux masculinity, the 13-year-old's idea of what masculinity is physically, then Fuentes is the faux intellectual masculinity.
Hmm.
And uh the way I think of it is, he's like a child who just discovered a naughty word
Mm.
and keeps saying that word. So much of the shtick that he does that I have seen is, it's shock jock stuff. It's modern Howard Stern. Okay, but he is clearly doing some things for shock value, but in a way that is incredibly sophomoric. You look at the way his comments on JD Vance, comparing JD Vance and Gavin Newsom. You can find I've got a clip of it. We may or may not use it, of him speaking high. I mean, and this is someone who is ostensibly of the MAGA movement, of the right,
Hmm.
and he's praising Gavin Newsom because he is a, you know lean, tall, good-looking guy, good-looking white guy married to a white woman, while JD Vance has got a chubby face and he's married to an Indian woman, child of immigrants, and his children are gasp brown. So, but again, this is a kid who has found a naughty word.
Hmm.
And so this is why he says the things he says about Hitler and Stalin and Jews, because he's a kid with a naughty word. So let's get to this
Which is funny
lengthy
because
comment.
just by his name, he is brown. I mean,
Uh
it's
yeah, it's not like his name is John Smith. It's
he. Okay, so
Fuentes.
you know what? We had a headline a while ago, "The Black Face of White Supremacy," about
Yeah.
Larry Elder.
Yeah.
No, this is literally the brown face of white supremacy.
Yeah.
Is Nick Fuentes?
Yep.
I mean, by his own admission, probably even.
Yeah, maybe. Um so he starts off, Fuentes is not what we'd want. He wants blood. That's not the same thing as having love for something and doing it for that thing. He would not be able to sustain support. Perhaps a swap like occurred in Britain with Bloody Mary and Elizabeth, so short term, but ultimately not something with huge momentum. That said, those movements required huge buy in from the populace, and today people are so dispersed and distracted. I do not think it likely Fuentes will go anywhere, and that is a relief.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, except we're seeing enough that
Mm-hmm.
there is a movement.
And this is where we are in a bit of a weird age, and it's hard to know because
It's
um,
amplified by the internet.
the internet amplifies things, but it also splinters things.
Mm,
So you're never, almost never going to have another Seinfeld or Friends or going back further, Cheers, The Cosby Show, shows that at any one time, fully a third of American audiences were watching that one show. That doesn't happen anymore simply because there is so much more and you can tailor things to specific crowds. Oh, you're interested in this kind of niche thing. Let me like you turn me on to the latest Modern Wisdom where Chris Williamson was talking to someone I'd never I think I'd vaguely heard of his work, but the name didn't ring a bell. And and he became popular on Twitter simply for putting side by side pictures of here is a Victorian sewer pumping station that
hmm.
looks like a cathedral, and here is something modern. Why does modern look like crap? Why is it ugly? Why do we no longer make beautiful things? Well, that is something interesting and niche, and it kind of caught the attention of a lot of people. Um, on the other hand, you because of the internet, you could have a coalition of niche. So yes, even though Fuentes by himself, his audience is concerningly large, larger than it should be. Same thing with Tate, but no, they're not on the level of Rogan or
Mm.
Adam Carolla or whatever. No, they're not on that level. But if you combine them all, they could be.
Yeah, well,
And so that
and
would be my concern where, yeah, I don't think he himself is going to go anywhere. But one, the movement might go somewhere. And two, the bigger concern is the disruption he causes that allows someone else to co opt it.
yeah, well, and we're about to go into Lindsay in the next paragraph, but this is the thing that is worrisome about this because he's like the canary in the coal mine, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because we saw, I mean, how many of the people that even your wokest of friends, how many of them are like truly woke? Where they're like, I see racism everywhere and all that, how many? There's not that many, but look what the power they had gathered
Yes.
over those years. And people like Lindsay, and this is why a lot of people are, I don't know why they're mad at him because he's just
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we don't want that power on the other side too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead and read on.
All right. So on Lindsay, I don't use Twitter, and his Twitter persona is rather unlikable.
It is true.
I
He,
like what he
he's
fi-
he's not he's very
Yes.
disagreeable. Yeah.
I like what he finds as he pulls the books together to match things, perhaps too much pattern matching. I have listened to a great deal of his stuff, and it's long and dry, but also really good for showcasing what is happening. I do think he's still very much funneling everything into a few narrow categories for which the data does not fit. As he describes critical theories, it kind of sounds like he's describing idealism. This particularly comes through in the discussion of woke right. Um, Lindsay shared a clip a day or two ago of Peterson on Rogan. I don't know how recent that episode is because I don't watch Rogan regularly. I'll tune in when there's a guest I really want to listen
I
to
think
or
it's
a
a few
topic.
months. I think it's a few months old.
So,
Yeah.
but Peterson was talking technically about the diagnosis of what this is and what attracts people to it. And he talked about, much like with Fuentes, what he was talking about is these dark trad type personalities. The way they take power is they prey upon vulnerability. And if you have a large cohort, a large population with high anxiety about something, you can easily co-opt them. You can easily manipulate them because they're already on edge. They're already concerned about something. And
Hmm.
then you come in as the hero and say, I can do that. And that is, yeah, I agree on the he can be rather unlikable, but there is a point that to be made. And it's really frustrating. This whole woke right has become a real mess because I think a lot of what is happening is one, I think a lot of there are bad actors, there are disingenuous people, and I think Lindsay even sometimes falls into that category of using the label as a cudgel for people he doesn't like,
Hmm.
and that is definitely happening, which is his point about what wokeism is. So he's falling into his own trap sometimes.
Yeah, and this is the problem with being a public personality is you're getting punched from so many different angles.
Yeah.
And sometimes those punches are legitimate,
Hmm.
but you still punch back. And so yeah, it's a tough battle. I don't envy his position because I mean he was a mathematician. It wasn't like he was
I
a
always forget that was his what his background was. Yeah.
yeah. He was brought into that crew as the person who
The
analyzed the
numbers and
data.
stats guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, but he was also a gifted writer when it
Mm.
came to research papers. So that was kind of his role, and then all of a sudden he was just thrust into the public because of the success they had, and very, I mean, him, Peter Boghossian, and Helen Pluckrose. It was like magic what they did in
Yeah.
their little project,
Well, it's
and
why who was the guy that you had me listen to on Dad Saves America? Was that
Boghossian.
Boghossian?
That was
Yeah,
Boghossian. Yeah.
he is much more eloquent in these kinds of back and forth discussions. Um,
Well, he also
partly
wrote the book How to Have Difficult Conversations. So, you
exactly.
know,
So because he understands the nuance, and that's the other frustrating thing about the mess that is this woke right discussion, there's a lot of talking past each other.
hmm.
So as an example, back to Fuentes, there were a lot of people criticizing uh, Tucker Carlson for bringing on Fuentes, not just bringing him on. Um, so you're significantly elevating his platform because Fuentes's audience is a small fraction of what Carlson's audience is. So that was the first criticism of why do you bring this guy on? But two, if you're going to bring him on, and an analogy I saw a lot of people make, Victor Davis Hanson, who's a very brilliant writer and
Hmm.
scholar, he made this point that William F. Buckley on the old show Firing Line, which you can find full episodes of, and they're great. He would bring on incredibly controversial people that he vehemently disagreed with. He brought on George Wallace. For anyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
George Wallace is one of the reasons Nixon was elected president because George Wallace split the Democrat ticket because he ran as I don't remember the party he ran under, but he basically ran purely on bringing back Jim Crow and fighting against the civil rights acts. That's how vehemently, openly racist he was. And Buckley brought him on his show, but Buckley brought him on his show to spar with him. He brought him on to attack his ideas and try and dismantle his ideas. Tucker did not push back very much against Fuentes. That was the big criticism. What really frustrated me is that around that same time, you had that quote unquote scandal where these young Republican operatives had their text threads leaked where they used some naughty language. But it was very clear that most of the time they weren't saying, yeah, I think Stalin is pretty cool, like Fuentes does, and meaning it. It was clear it was, oh, yeah, we're right. So I must be super racist. It was obviously a joke. And it was obviously a joke at the left and at the way the left portrays the right. And it was being lumped together with the criticism of Fuentes. And
Hmm.
so a lot of these no enemies to the right people were conflating the two. And I can criticize Carlson for bringing on Fuentes, and I can criticize Fuentes and Tate and those kind of people, and also say, guys, we shouldn't cancel people just because they had private text threads leaked in which they use some language that they and use some clearly jokes, even if they're racial jokes that, yeah, maybe they wouldn't use in public, but they shouldn't be canceled for using them in private.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll bring a personal example. You sent me those the squat racks in the Planet Fitness yesterday,
Yeah.
and you were like, "What's missing?" And I said, my response was a joke. It was girls in booty shorts.
Yep.
And the thing that was missing was the bars, and I saw that too. I knew the answer to the quiz, but I just made that joke because I knew you would laugh. Am I saying that all these that girls in booty shorts should be the norm in the gym? No, it's it was a joke.
Yeah.
It was a joke that I'll admit to, and you can go through my text records. I don't care. Uh, but yeah, that I mean, it's the same thing. And if you've never been in for those that haven't been with athletes, okay, if you've never been in a locker room, you want to know the quote unquote racism that goes on in a locker room by everybody, and they're all still on the same team and they all still get along because they
Mm-hmm.
know they're just effing around with each other.
Yeah.
That's yeah. If you just hang out in a locker room for 30 minutes one day and you're not going to be woke no more.
This I think I mentioned this a while back. This came up a couple of years ago when Jason Whitlock had Warren Sapp and Brett Favre on to preview the upcoming NFL season, and they were joking around and they were making fun of the white boy, but also bonding over the fact that before the show, Sapp and Whitlock were shocked at Brett Favre's taste in music because he loves classic Motown and blues. And
Mm.
he's like, dude, I'm from Mississippi. That is the home, the birthplace of a subgenre called the Delta Blues, which is where guys like Muddy Waters come from and BB King. That was their style. So he's like, this is the music I grew up with. And they're like, how does this, redneck white boy know who all these, awesome classic black blues singers are? He's like, is this the music I grew up with? So yeah, they were busting balls, but also bonding over the things they had in common because gosh, that's what adults do. Anywho,
Yeah.
speaking of adults that are way
Yeah.
smarter than us, McGilchrist.
Yep.
Um, I'm I'm glad to see Ian McGilchrist is coming up in your discussions, and you're both quite familiar with his work there, as it's really relevant. Sam is familiar with his work. We're really familiar with his work. I'm vaguely familiar with it because I tried reading the book and it hurt my brain. Um, I'm going to go back to it after I finish Martha Beck's book because hers is much more on my level. Anywho,
Which is what was her point was
yeah,
to make an actionable item out of his very, very, very deep work. Yeah.
exactly. What I'm also seeing is that we have to keep in mind that the cog sci guys,
Hey,
you
I'm
want
a
to explain
cog
that
sci
real quick?
guy. That's yeah, cognitive psychology.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
are also working things out with regards to how perceptions work, and to remember that at a point in time, people discovered dinosaur fossils and thought God was trying to test their faith.
Yeah,
True.
that's your people's.
Yeah. The physical world, is it really the primary feedback mechanism, or do we impose belief over it and then double down on that belief when evidence contradicts? We build long rationalist arguments, and a lot of what we do is akin to the Greeks and the feather and ball experiment on the Tower of Pisa. Large social movements generally require a form of social proof, and people don't open boxes and look inside them. As you've mentioned, for meditation, people are questioning the thoughts or noticing them, then seeing the origin or reason as opposed to tacit acceptance. Lindsay says all the woke stuff is a turd gift wrapped in the best box you can imagine, which is its appeal, which is kind of what Peterson
Yeah.
was saying in his diagnosing of it is um and to your point earlier about how many people are truly woke versus how many people are um woke adjacent, because it
Well, it makes you
sounds
feel good.
nice. It makes you feel good.
It makes you feel good.
It's niceness. It's the box that it's wrapped up in is niceness. It's just I want to be polite. I want to be
Yeah.
nice.
It's just being polite to do the pronouns. It's just being polite to do this. It's, affirm
Hmm.
them. It's in the word, affirm.
Hmm.
Affirm their beliefs. Affirm their this. Affirm their that. Yeah. But you got a kid that says, I'm a dragon. And you go, okay, you're a dragon. Yeah. We do that naturally because you want the kid to explore. But then when you say, okay, you're a girl when you're really a boy, and here's a puberty blocker, then it becomes a different thing. You
Exactly.
know,
Um, where was I?
people are lying. Yeah.
People are lying with categories, and generally people are not double checking everything, since not everything is hyper relevant. It costs resources to go the distance. Lindsay, at least, has the mothers involved and has been working with the schools.
He has, yeah, he's been doing good work there. Yeah.
And that's where I think the so much of what we have talked about, and you know, you're commenting here, Jason, on uh, we did a number of episodes that were all uh, woven together with this idea of the warped and damaged education system in the West in general, but in America in particular, why that is and what the effect of that has been. And um, so much of the cultural rot is because, one, you were indoctrinated and inculcated um, with this ideology in school. But then on top of that, as if that wasn't bad enough, you were dumbed down by a system that taught critical theory rather than critical thinking.
Hmm.
And so you can't think your way out of these um, manipulations, these philosophical, intellectual um, manipulations that are trying to hijack your brain are much easier if your critical thinking centers have atrophied. In the
Hmm.
same way that if you don't work your core and your legs, it's a lot easier for me to push you over because your balance sucks.
Well, for those that can see, if you look to the right of the comments, we have Dr. Andrew Huberman there as one of our suggested videos and how your brain works and how it changes. And I suggest that as a listen. It's only an hour, which is great for him because he usually makes 3 hour videos. But yeah, it's how your brain actually changes because of how you're using it. And because we're not forcing people to think and adjust and work through things, we're just telling them what to think,
Mm.
that their brain is adjusting accordingly. In a good example of this, we talked about this Monday in my child psychopathology class, is language. Because some of the people, everybody in the class except for me, is in the school psych, I guess, direction, the major. And so there, a lot of them are teachers and everything that are trying to like take a next step. And one of the things that was brought up was kids that are taught sight words don't learn how to read as well as kids that are taught, the phonetics. And it's like, yeah, because that's how language works. Language is a pattern of sounds and the marrying of what you hear, what you say, how you write it down, all of those things all come into it, and it's a pattern. But if you just memorize a word and how it looks, you don't learn it the same. And so when you just say are given the, well, this is what human relations is versus actually relating with people and learning it, it hits different.
Mhm.
And you can be manipulated a lot more. So,
Speaking of hitting difference, that's the next section is
do I need to scroll
Shapiro
down?
versus Kirk.
Yeah, there
Um,
we go.
you're right about Shapiro. Kirk was the nice guy, but some have argued he did some arguments in bad faith, but they tend to say a lot of things. I think what Kirk was doing was very hard and taxing, and he was an excellent exemplar of agape.
Hmm.
And as you've talked about, one of
The
the failures of the English language is we just have one word for love, and one of the roots of Western civilization is Greek, and they have four. And I believe,
agape
you know,
is the long-lasting love. It's what they
it
attribute to God, right?
it, it
That
is
is the
it
love you
is
no matter what.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's I was going to say. I'm pretty sure that that is the Greek word that is used in the original Greek texts, the original Greek scriptures, when Jesus says, "No greater love has a man than to lay down his life for his fellow man."
Hmm.
Is that that love is agape love? That is the highest form in uh, in in the Greek understanding. So it's the the greatest love and charity, um, not just God to man, but I believe it is also man to God, um, as opposed to the brotherly love that you would have, for your fellow man, for your best friend, and family. That this is even higher. Um, and that is what I think was why that his assassination was so transformative, is because it doesn't take long of watching his clips to, even if you don't understand this, you can intuit it. You can say, this is a nice guy. This is someone who's earnest. He's not trying, he is making points, but he's not trying to score points. Um, Though the more I look at human psychology, it looks like people only behave when teeth exist, but defining what that is tough. With no definition, it becomes open-ended and people imagine monsters. Monsters imagined are more terrifying than one in the light. Bruce the Shark and Jaws. The movie was a masterpiece
Hmm.
because the shark was broken. The moment you look back on the spider in the original It, the graphics are terrible. The moment the monster is rendered on the screen, it's less scary. People lack the nip or the gentle tap. We don't have the social structure where your neighbors matter or someone close to you gives you a gentle reminder that your behavior is a little out of line. So people are not having accurate feedback from the environment to ping off. That said, ideology and belief may supersede all of these, and so environment may matter less, but that's not my view. I think environment, which includes social environment, matters. The environment lacks pain, pain in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, you don't adapt without pain, right?
Well,
So if
yeah,
you
as a,
lift weights, we'll get in our lane, as people would
I was
say.
just about to go there.
Yeah, yeah. If you lift weights, you need to actually damage the muscle for the muscle to grow. And but if you damage it too much, you're hurt and you can't do anything.
Yes.
Yeah. So pain in a good way. We need stressors in our life. Now, I want to rewind back just a second because I knew I had a source on this. So we were talking on the love, the words for love, and in the Greek and Latin, they have four. Cari I'm going to mispronounce this, but caritas, which is love of God and humanity, philos, which is friendships and fondness, Eros, which is erotic love, and agape, which is deep, mature love. So there's your source on that.
So
Yeah.
the example I thought of was a little more negative, but is also important because Jason, you mentioned that feedback, the hey, dude, that's not cool. That you should have like within a friend group, or when guys are sitting around busting balls and someone goes too far, and hey, dude, that's not cool.
Hmm.
That's too far. And and the packaging you talked about, um the the pretty package wrapped around woke, the one of the problems with the it being wrapped in niceness, politeness, is then you don't push back. And this is a great, I'll speak from my lane. This is a great failing of the pleated khaki, sweater vested, nicer than God, suburban preacher and church.
Hmm.
That one of my favorite verses is in Second Timothy. I think it's 3:16. All scripture is God breathed. Very important if you're a believer, because that is foundational, that this isn't just guys philosophizing. This comes from God. But the second part of that verse is what's really important, which is, and is useful for teaching, training, and rebuking in righteousness. Sometimes you have to say, even to your brother, literal or metaphorical, dude, not cool. Dude, stop that.
Which is it's like you're born agains, and the born agains are the most righteous, and they're and I'll do it outside of religion to not like to keep it a little bit more polite here, but you're freaking I just started dieting people.
Mm.
They tell you all about it and they tell you how bad you are. And they can't help but use the word organic in every other
Oh,
sentence.
geez. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, oh, we know, bro.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so yesterday I had actually a positive experience at the gym for once, and I had to tell these youngsters, because when I was training, most of my training ended up being high schoolers, because I helped with the swim team, because the high school my son went to actually had a good strength and conditioning coach on staff, and he pretty much only worked with the football team.
Not our high school.
Yeah. But
Ugh.
that has been my experience, is either you don't have one, you have one that's no good, or he only works with the football team. So I helped I helped set up the program, and advise the coach on how to do their dry land, as they call it, strength and conditioning stuff. Um, and so I like helping youngsters get a good foundation. And so I had to compliment these two girls, because I usually don't offer coaching, because people don't want coaching, they want affirmation. But they were clearly confused, because at the quote unquote gym, all the Smith machines are angled Smith machines, which, if you've never used one, can make doing a squat awkward because of the way the bar moves. And I was trying to coach them on, okay, here's how you need to kind of modify. But what I was so impressed by, and as I was leaving, I stopped by to say, thank you, kudos, good job, because I have literally only ever seen one other person who was doing something that was awkward, uncomfortable, and they couldn't get it right. And so they stopped. They had that negative feedback of, oh, something is wrong, and they listened to it. There's a lot of things I see at the public gym that drives me crazy, and I would have to say at the top of the list, because it is so consequential, are the number of people I see who are clearly uncomfortable, if not in outright pain, and they keep going. And these two, they were like, you know what, this is awkward, this is uncomfortable, let's go to a different machine, let's do a different exercise.
Yeah, so I maybe it's a quirk of mine, but I have documented and I take very, very, very personally, which I think every coach should do, any injury that has been under my watch.
Mm,
And I know every single one. I know how it happened. I know what was going on at that time. And I even count the ones where I wasn't there, but it was somebody I trained training somebody.
mm,
So, but early in my career, it was probably my first 6 months coaching, there was a lady, and we were doing Romanian deadlifts, and she went out, and I immediately said, drop the bar. So drop the bar, and she kept saying ow and picking up the bar, and I said, drop the bar. I yelled at her, and she kept picking it up and trying to walk it back into the rack,
Ugh.
and I kept yelling at her to drop the freaking bar, and she has had two back surgeries since then. And it wasn't the initial ow. Because she refused to drop the dang bar.
Mm,
And I mean, I still count that against me, but at the same time, you just no, it was Kenny Rogers. Know when to hold him, know when to fold him, right?
yeah,
Just drop the damn bar. It'll make a loud noise. Okay, whatever, but you're gonna be
yeah.
okay.
Back to the topic at hand. How
Yeah.
much of what is going on culturally is working? Ha are we making things better or are we making things worse? So maybe we should stop doing some of the things we're doing.
Hmm.
You're you're recommended on your side there are all, uh philosophy and academics and talks, and I've got a lot of pop culture criticism here, and so how much of just from pop culture is, you would think at some point after all the flops and all the criticisms they would stop doing it, and yet they just keep doubling down on
Hmm.
the woke ideology and the messaging and the not just, hey, how about we just make a good story?
Yeah, well, and to back to the kind of the topic at hand, a lot of the people that are considered on the right now are doubling down. I'll throw one under the bus right here, Tim Pool.
Yeah.
He keeps he gets offended by the fact that he was considered part of the woke right.
Mm,
And he is saying things that are like, oh, and then this is like uh capturing this audience and da 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 da. And he's proving the point that he's arguing against. And it's like, no, you are. You
yeah.
are because you keep denying it and you're pushing this message, which I still love IRL. I still watch it because they go through the news really well and I love the panel and everything, but he's doubling down. And I'm like, dude, you would be so good if you would just get back in the middle like you were.
Yeah.
If you would just
Yeah.
become an objective journalist again. And
All right, so this name rings a bell, but do you know who the John
I do
Vervaeke
not. I do not.
rings a bell, but I don't remember who he is. As John Vervaeke says, we have reduced knowing to the propositional, but we lack participatory or procedural knowing. That's often what a mentor does. That's also what having a role model directly in your life does. A book often just gives you propositional knowledge.
Hmm.
Embodying the book or the story makes it come alive. Wheel of Time is very detailed, but even there, you can view it as a set of things. But to tie it to your life to make it relevant is actually quite hard if you don't have life experience. Too much time on screens or an anxiety because you can't map reality safely. Think Peterson's Order Chaos, where the optimal challenge allows you to confront the chaos and explore so you know where the boundaries are. That imagined pain or inexperience is the terrible monster you can't see. It's crippling.
Hmm.
And this is what Martha Beck is talks about in the first, say, quarter to third of her book, is how your left hemisphere can hijack your whole brain and send you into this negativity spiral, this anxiety spiral, where it just constantly keeps reinforcing itself. And you need some sort of technique to break out of it. You need someone. She uses an analogy of one of her first anxiety attacks when she was a kid. Is she went into a hall of mirrors at a carnival funhouse and she freaked the heck out and couldn't figure out how to get out. She needed someone else to come in, grab her, and show her where the exit was. Sometimes you need that. And but to your point about the mentor is, one, where are the mentors? And two, are people intellectually honest enough to actually be open to listening to a mentor?
Yeah, and I'm gonna invoke, I don't know I'm gonna look up this Vervaeke guy, but I'm going to invoke another kind of philosopher, economist, Nassim Taleb, where the key is not being like overly structured, but
Hmm.
also not being like just willy-nilly all over the place. And he talks about the object of anti-fragility and how to survive black swan events and things like that is to have your base, is to create this structure, but then constantly tinker at the edges.
Yeah.
So you and that's actually how my fitness program is designed. We have the five major variables: muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular, body composition, and flexibility, mobility. We have those things, and we should create a balanced circle there. And everybody's kind of an amoeba shape when they come into it. And so we try to balance the circle, but then we constantly push that circle out in all the different directions. And so it's again, it's the idea of working with complex systems. I work with a human body. He worked with economics, and now we're venturing into the realm of psychology as well. So it's it is an exploratory process, but an exploratory process where you're tinkering at the edges, not just throwing things out.
Yeah. Um, so he's got a second comment here that is even lengthier than the first. Do we have time for it, or do we need to save this for next time?
Let's try to blow through it. Let's try to blow
Okay.
through it. Yeah. Well, we'll give it another 15 minutes here.
Additionally, the online space is full of hyper reality. You can film 100 people and make it look like thousands and make a situation look real. Lindsay is also speaking to how social pressure is very hard to deal with. Twitter storms and people being flown out to where you are telling you that you're not welcome is very scary to the human mind. We're
Okay, so
very,
that's that yeah, that comment we actually addressed that earlier.
yeah,
That might be part of the problem is the Twitter storms.
exactly.
Yeah.
And how Twitter isn't real life, but so many of the taste makers, policy setters, trend makers, cultural whatevers, they are there. And so they think that's real life. And so then if you're not scrolling through Twitter constantly, but you're listening to these people in their podcasts or shows or whatever, and they're telling you that this is what's going on, then, oh my gosh, really? And you look around and go, well, I mean, I don't see it, but I guess it is happening somewhere.
Well, I mean, I just see how the volume of comments and stuff some of these people make. I'm like,
Hmm.
you are constantly on your phone
Yeah.
or your computer or whatever you're using. There is no way you could be commenting this fast all the time.
Yeah.
Unless you have a team of people. Some
And
of
how
these
many of them do? Yeah.
personalities do have teams of people, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We're very tribal beings still, have been since Homo sapien first arrived, and just what a tribe is has simply shifted over time.
Yep.
The Overton window moved a lot, and it's kind of been getting to a desensitized place. This is likely why Fuentes is getting airtime, or rather attention. People should be allowed airtime. It's whether or not people take interest, and then looking at how sustained that interest is. That's the difference between canceling and deplatforming. I'll add my own thoughts here is,
Hmm.
oh, you're woke, because you're saying this person should be canceled. No, I'm just saying you don't have an obligation to platform this person. I'm fine that there are no gatekeepers and that he can make his show in his mom's basement with his fake ferns and, try and look like he's an intellectual and telling you just the hard news. And he should have 12 viewers. Okay. I'm fine. Be out there, put your content out there. What we're saying is that's the difference between canceling, is that the cancel culture said not only should you not be putting your content out there, you shouldn't have any sort of social or economic footprint anywhere. Your whole life needs to be canceled. You shouldn't be able to get a burger flipping job because we find you so problematic. That's what
Yeah.
cancel culture was.
Well, then, as I like to explain it, the difference between boycott and cancel culture is
Mm,
one is ground up and one is top down.
exactly.
Yeah. So ground up, you know what, Bud Light, you do this thing and nobody likes it and nobody buys your product anymore. That's ground up. If it's a couple Twitter people writing into X whatever entertainment company to get this person off, Shane Gillis or whatever, because they said this thing back in 1990, that's top down.
Mhm.
So,
A lot of things fail to build momentum. It is also hard to be a leader or someone who stands out because it requires you to push past the need for social validation. This is something Owen Cook tackles a great deal. Another name I'm not familiar with, so I'll have to look him up. Um, he will change both your lives if you dive into his stuff. So you need someone who is able to stand out and have their own principles and not be swayed by the tribe. Pajot and Peterson both speak to how easy it is to feed into the lowest shadow part of the tribe. That kind of social validation is intoxicating, and you can easily stray into being an avatar of their resentment and lose yourself. That is why one of the first episodes we did was talking about crowd mob psychology,
mhm.
um, because coming from a Frenchman who was looking at the French
Yeah.
Revolution
Le
and the
Bon.
terror,
Yeah.
Le Bon, and going, how the heck did this happen? And he thought about it, he wrote about it, and he was kind of the first to tackle this idea, and his ideas are still pretty influential because of his insight, and they're still applicable. And what we have done with social media is make mob psychology more appealing, uh, quicker to spread, and even worse, we have monetized it.
Hmm.
Um, all right. I've been particularly concerned over how the leftists are waging their grand strategy since it follows a lot of Mao, and I do find it fascinating purely from a skill strategic standpoint. That said, the narrative control and the breaking down of selective public criticism and questions designed not to learn but to subvert, circumvent, are very much building a hyper reality. How many actual people truly follow the left stuff? Which you addressed, we've addressed. Most people are low resolution. Is this the Wizard of Oz? We did not know there is real money behind things. There also seems to be real power behind it too. This whole Hegel moving the Geist thing for Marxist teleology of history is concerning, but it's a belief system that is empty. It gets carried as long as it can be fed. If one disrupts the supply chain for a short period, it may starve it out. That may be optimistic. Lindsay, at least, has brought to light many things that were hidden. The trouble is that rabbit hole is deep, and also, like Musashi says, if you deviate from the way even a little, then you will miss. For anyone who doesn't know, Musashi is considered the best and most famous swordsman of Japan,
Yeah.
back in medieval Japan. Um, and he also wrote not just the practical technique, he talked of the philosophy of it.
Well, he was the
In
definition of the warrior poet.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I feel dumb for not bringing that up when I played that clip from I just forgot his name again, the guy that was talking to McGilchrist,
Desmond.
Desmond,
Yeah.
um, about how the point of technique is to forget the technique. So that is falls in line with that.
Well, I
Um,
mean, okay, so this is my wheelhouse. So in skill development, there are four basic stages, and it's the unconscious incompetence. So you suck and you don't know it. There's the conscious incompetence where you suck and you kind of realize it. And that's when you're starting to learn. When somebody's teaching you something, you're like, I'm not getting this, and I'm trying, but I can't do it. Then there's conscious competence where you can do it, but you have to think really hard. But the last stage is unconscious competence, which is where it's automatized, where you can just do it without thinking about it.
yeah.
And that's what they're kind of getting at. And that those are the technical terms to go with it from, the skill development scientific thing. But what the old warrior poets realize is that that was the thing.
Mhm. It may be of no value to undermine past present philosophies or to disprove them, since generally people are married to one thing that it gives them, and that's what holds them to it and blinds them to the other faults. Our perception does often get dominated by one piece of data, since we can't all have a properly complex weighting of all the information we look at. Most likely, there's a morass of low resolution understandings built on the do no harm principle, which has become elevated. That's where I think the linchpin is, and it's likely due to the aforementioned monster thing, where you assume it's much worse than it is. Kirk was bringing real conversation to the front. The dialogical is very important. In coding, you have a rubber duck debugging where you tell a colleague the thing and you find the solution despite them saying nothing. We're not having real conversations. People also objectify one another and lack a complex, deep understanding of human nature, both for themselves and others. I think that's very important. Is the for themselves as well. Is if you don't have an understanding of human nature in general and also your own nature, then what are you going to project onto others? You know, perhaps we're just not ready for internet. Well, that'll preach.
Yeah.
Perhaps we've regressed somewhat, or perhaps certain things that once forced us to interact with people we didn't like is gone, such as Sunday church congregations. What I particularly love about Wheel of Time, and I'm curious to see what the connection here is how there does exist the one final battle, yet you notice so many other things matter too. It creates depth in that there is the overarching meaning, but also the micro meanings. One may say life is ultimately futile in the grand scheme of things, but as Peterson points out, you can do that with any time frame and eradicate the important things in front of you. So I've been trying in my own personal life to construct meaning to re-enchant the world. This isn't just an apartment, it's my apartment. It matters to me. Baked into reaching that is understanding that you matter. Thus, others matter, as you alluded earlier, to self, family, outer, larger, etc.
Hmm.
Now, does this mean somehow you're supposed to jump back into the individual as opposed to the group, or is it rather to notice that a deeper constructed web of meaning is what matters? Is that not an antidote to ideology?
Okay, I think he's referencing, I think this is the conversation where I brought up that we were talking in class about collectivism versus individuality
Mm-hmm.
and the virtue that goes with doing it because I think it's the right thing versus doing it because I will be shamed if I don't.
Mm.
And
And as you mentioned earlier in the comment, Jason, of it, there is an element of necessity to social pressure of, hey, dude, don't do that,
yeah,
right? But on the other hand, there's a balancing act there because that social pressure can say, hey, dude, don't do that when that is something that is objectively good.
yeah. And we kind of learn through social pressure, but if you don't ever take that next step,
Mm-hmm.
then we're asking if there's actually virtue to it, you know? So,
And I think that all it's all connected again to the critical theory instead of critical thinking. Because if you have
mhm,
critical thinking, and you have enough self-worth and self-confidence, when that public pressure is applied, you'll go, yeah, but why?
mhm. Well, as you said earlier about the friend group, it's like, yeah, bro, you shouldn't have done that. You know, that was not cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be some we this is Richard Wrangham's work that we domesticate each other.
Mm.
Especially as men. Men, we are not the silverback gorilla because of the pressure of groups of people, of groups of men. And so we're not just the tyrant can take over because of the social pressure that comes with, you know what, you're the tyrant, but there's four of us.
Yeah.
And I mean that's how we developed as humans. That's why we are the apex predator, basically.
The one thing mattering more than the others. If you make everything matter with equal priority, then you're Iblis in the hell he can't get out of. Yet, if you make one thing ultra primal, as some Christians did with asking Jesus into your heart being the only thing that matters, you don't see everything. And that's where the pleated khaki, nicer than God, sweater vested suburban church comes from. It's just ask Jesus into your heart. Okay, I'm done now. Well, I think you should probably keep reading that book because there are other things to it. And I love this analogy here already, just from
Which
the
is, I,
beginning.
I love, by the way, Jason, I love that you're bouncing back and forth between our
Yeah,
philosophical and the Wheel of Time. Yeah.
because that's the whole point is the story applied to life. Rand tells the Ashaman that they are men, not weapons. That's a huge shift. They aren't these channeling monsters, and Ashaman become more normalized in the story as you go along, but initially, men who can channel is scary. They build an identity for themselves. They are men who have families and care for others, more complex daily living than just forged for a single purpose, not made for history to eat them. The Aes Sedai hold on to their distant image to maintain power, untouchable and cold, and always assuming leadership to make others see them in a certain way. It's not warm, it's distant and builds mistrust. People still do their deeds, but behind their backs. They don't trust the Aes Sedai to properly weigh matters, or rather, it gets eroded. That's a breakdown of conversation, a breakdown of the day to day interacting with the long term. You have to nest things together into a proper hierarchy that doesn't crush the now for the future only. Yes, we must sacrifice in the now for the future, but if we always sacrifice what's in front of us, then the future becomes an ideology that tyrannizes the now. This is something that Peterson talks about a lot about, you know, don't be a you in the now that your future self is going to be ashamed of. That is essentially what you're talking about there with that Ashaman Aes Sedai dynamic and how you live life in life, right? And you don't. It also goes to again the story applied to real life. The Aes Sedai, the White Tower, are a great example of how so many of our institutions have become corrupted and are no longer trusted, and how bad that is. It is one of the reasons that the world that Randland is in the state it is in when it is most needed, when it is most necessary, is because the church analogy it isn't trusted. They're the ones that are supposed to be bringing everyone together, and yet they're actually creating more distrust. They're actually creating more schisms. It is the reason why one of uh uh Ishmael's prime moves early on was to infiltrate the White Tower and create the Black Ajah because he knew this institution is going to be necessary to stand against the shadow. So I must corrupt it. Um,
Where are we at? I've been trying to understand. Okay, I've been trying to understand
I've been
the,
trying to understand the Gnostic stuff Lindsay points out, and it does seem to show a lot of what's here and now is ultimately meaningless, and all that matters is the world to come. In a large way, this is how a lot of Christianity has operated. The Orthodox and the Catholics do bring a more now oriented approach to daily living. In a way, you could say our culture has been a good precursor to this current situation where one thing is all that matters and the present doesn't. The Russians believed so much in the party and its ability and were told to sacrifice for it. And then when you sacrifice for something, you love it and buy in. We always protect our investments and double down and won't let
well,
go.
that's how cults work.
People
Yeah.
are more likely to remain in an abusive relationship because they have already been through so much and paid so much and invested into it. You hope for those good moments. You train yourself to ignore the information in front of you, and your perception is dominated by the future hope. Some have said that our time has forgotten renewal and the ability to truly refresh ourselves. That kind of reset allows you to see the present differently. You go on holiday and return, and you've changed, but the environment hasn't. Now it all looks different. Your points about masculinity not being an idle pursuit is spot on. And yes, renewal and relaxing is very relevant. And yes, we are made to explode in energy and then conserve. Our minds are perpetually busy. We are not resting.
Deep thoughts,
All,
man. Jason, the great comments.
a lot to unpack there, and really synthesizing um so much of what we have been talking about the entire time, and why you started this channel in the first place.
Hmm.
Because these are the kinds of things we want to talk about. But also, the other thing I really like about your comment is the back and forth. Is, like I said a few weeks ago, I've been mulling this over in my head, and I truly think that what wisdom is first understanding that the world is very complex and chaotic. And secondly, that means there are a lot of contradictions in the world and in life. But what wisdom is being able to recognize what is a contradiction, but what is a paradox.
Mm.
Because so much of what you've said on the surface, if you're not thinking critically, someone was going to look at that and say, you keep contradicting yourself. No, you keep saying this, but also that. And
Hmm.
we need to have both. We need to try and stay somewhere in the middle. We need to do to, to your last, your summation there is, we need to do, but we also need to refresh and renew.
Hmm.
Okay, you cannot constantly live in the metaverse. But you know what? Sometimes you need to check out and, play some games with your kids and your friends. You know what? You
Hmm.
you you need to, you need to get the yard work done and then go sit down with a beer and watch a football game to
Hmm.
to let yourself mentally and
Yep.
physically recharge.
You need to work out, but you also need to sleep. You need to eat healthy, but sometimes you need to enjoy food. All of these things, that's the dialectical, right? It's the two
Mm-hmm.
things that seem opposing, but they work together. And yeah, so this it's been I loved your comments. Keep commenting. Uh, shoot.
I mean, that's what we want to see. It's, yeah, it'd be nice if someday we get lots of subscribers and lots of views, but what's more important is
Is the
the
people that are like so into it that they have those deep thoughts that came out of what we did. Yeah.
it's like I told the youngsters at the gym yesterday, is thank you for restoring at least a little bit of faith in humanity for me, because it's nice to see that no matter how many times I see things that drive me crazy, there's someone out there who is thinking. There are still people out there who are thinking
Hmm.
and thinking critically. For them, it was, hey, this doesn't feel right. I'm not going to push it. I'm going to do something else. For Jason here, it's, you are clearly thinking deeply. You are consuming other deep thinkers. You cited Pageau and Peterson and Lindsay and McGilchrist and
Which
people we
I'm not
hadn't
a
heard
big
of that we'll go
Pageau
check out.
fan, by the way.
I've listened to him. I
Yeah.
I know who he is, but I've listened to him in the context of him talking with other people
Yeah.
that I follow more. Um, but you're taking all of this in and you're synthesizing it and applying it to your own life with your own perceptions, and
Hmm.
that's very important. That is how, more of that is how we get out of the mess that we are currently in.
Yeah, the problem is the pessimist in me, which I'm
Yep.
usually happiness and you're usually cyanide. But the pessimist in me, actually the realist in me, I don't think most of the population is capable of that.
I
And I
I
think I
am.
think Jason's a special person. I think
Mhm.
Isomorphic's a special person. I think Scott's a special person. I think those people are capable of it, and that's probably why they listen. Uh, and I hope to try to be that kind of person. But I don't think most of the population is capable of that, and that's what worries me. Because we do keep falling into the same traps. The same propaganda
Mhm.
works. We still think diamonds are forever. It's all of these things that are just thrown at you. I want to every it's the argument of was everybody in Nazi Germany bad? The answer is no, but they were led.
Mhm.
And
They were led and they followed
Will,
monsters into the abyss.
yeah, and the same thing with Stalinist or even Leninist Soviet Union. It's uh, Genghis Khan. Go back to pick your bad person of history and put them in the top. And the reason we remember them is because there was a nation behind them.
Mm.
Nero. He was not he might be the worst person in history, but a whole empire followed him because that's what they did.
Yeah.
And people
Well,
that would talk like us would be dead.
the potential optimism here, back to the this and that of yes, social media is rotting our brains, and I don't think culturally, collectively, we're quite ready for it yet. And we certainly, or rather, we were pre-prepared for it badly. We
Mm,
in in if you are of a particular theological bent, you might view it as a long-term demonic plan. Go read C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters. As the rot that is our education system perfectly prepared us to be corrupted by social media.
hmm
If we were still critical thinkers, it's like I subjected my wife to a 15-minute rant on AI generated music because as I've said before, I love music and I hate that I have no musical talent because I love that ability to express emotion in 3 to 5 minutes and move people, right? AI generated music could be an incredible tool. Instead, it's being used to throw out a lot of slop. You know, it I wouldn't call myself a musician, but if I was smart enough to figure out how to make AI generated music, I could at least call myself a producer of music. But
hmm
the way I would,
Content creator.
yes, the way I would use it is I would use it as a tool of, okay, I can write free verse poetry. I can't turn it into lyrics. Let me write some free verse to get my thoughts there. Now let me run it through a large language model and tell it I want it to turn these into song lyrics in this particular style. Then I'm not going to stop there. Then I'm going to go through several layers of editing before I come out the other end with something I'm satisfied with. And then I can hear the music in my head. I don't know how to make it. So let me tinker around until yeah, that's the sound that's in my head.
Mm.
Okay. So I could use these tools to generate something that is genuine, even if it was constructed artificially. But that's not how it's being done because we are so low effort, so comfortable, so frankly lazy that we are just churning out and then worse, consuming what is, I mean, Wally and Idiocracy were the most prescient movies made in the last 30
This
years.
is the second time today Wally came up about being predictive because we were in the gym and they were like, hey, yeah, people are just riding around in their little things, getting fat, and
Yep.
yeah,
Well, and then the next stage to that, we already have the scooters and we're letting ourselves become so physically um lax, but now the mental laxity, because remember the other part of Wally is
they
they're
had
on
the
their
screen.
scooters
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they have the screen right in front of them and they're not even watching what they have no clue about the world around them. It's just what's on the screen in front of them.
yeah.
And how many times have we complained about people who are not watching where they're going because they are out in public walking, staring at their phone?
Oh God, we had our speeches in class the other day, and they were speaking, looking at their
Oh,
phone,
geez.
reading from their phone, and I'm like, dude,
Eye
make a
contact, man.
slide,
Yeah.
make a slide, put some major points that remind you what you want to say, and then talk. Like talk to people like they're people instead of reading. I mean, I don't know how many of them just read their slides. They just,
I
that's
was about
all
to
they
get back to my
did.
optimistic point because I got sidetracked on a rant there, and instead you sidetracked me again to point out just how corrupted our institutions are and why it has led to these kinds of things. One of my daughter's gen ed requirements for her first couple of years in college was she had to take a speech class.
Hmm.
Her speech class was an online class.
How are you going to speak in front of people if you don't get in front of people?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. She was ranting about it, but then she said, "But I'm not going to take advantage of that." So
Yeah.
if that's the way it is and that's the option, well, here you go. Then I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
But
and then there was a Q and A after each speech, and
mm,
nobody would say anything. So I just like felt obliged to ask questions to every speaker
and then you start feeling
because
awkward because you're the only one
I
talking.
was the only one talking. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm not, I'm, and people that follow the channel, they know I'm actually like definitionally introverted.
Hmm.
Like it wears me out. I
Hmm.
mean, I can speak. I'm on here on a microphone in front of all the YouTubes if anybody pays attention, but it wears me the fuck out. And so in class, I'm like crawling through glass to get through
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And nobody would talk. So I was like, okay, I can take one thing out of that whole speech and ask a question. Can nobody else do that? Were you not paying attention? Of course, a lot of them weren't. They were on their phones or
Yep.
on their laptops.
Yep.
I always sit in the back because I have a little aversion to people sitting behind me, which is, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's the rough childhood or whatever, but yeah, I could see what is on everybody's laptop,
Yeah.
around me, and they're not paying attention. But at the same time,
Not class related. Yeah.
yeah, who is it? Is it Peterson who talks about being present in
Mm.
conversations and how just listening to the person across from you is different than having a conversation with somebody when you already have a canned speech in mind? And that's what it is. It's just being present.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that was Peterson. It might be Gad Sad.
Peterson has talked about that idea in different ways, but
Yeah.
I don't know that um I don't know that he specifically, but to the point I was getting at, the optimism, the potential optimism here is that you're right, that just based on bell curves, the people like Isomorphic and Scott and Jason here are going to be towards the tail of, towards the small end of the bell curve. But that also means that there are people who can counter the other end of the bell curve,
It's true.
those dark
Okay. Yeah.
tread people. And social media gives us the ability to say, well, hold on a second, and put that out there, even if we're not face to face. And I think the cure, the micro that leads to the macro, is simply people like us saying, no, I don't think so because, or as you've pointed out, and something I've tried to get better at is like back to exercise as an analogy. Don't just say, I mean, the lady who's saying, oh, yeah, drop the effing bar. Yes.
Mm.
In a situation like that, you just say, hey, drop the effing bar. But if somebody is doing something potentially problematic, don't just say, hey, don't do that, do this. Say, hey, why are you doing that? Or why are you doing that way? Just ask the question, start the dialogue, because
Hmm.
maybe they'll have a good reason. And you'll go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And
Hmm.
maybe they'll come back with, well, why do you ask? Well, see, because I was thinking, and then a dialogue happens, and then both of you grow. Or maybe they're open to well, I was doing this because of this. Why? And, well, see, there's a problem here because.
Yeah, and that's the we can go to Bogosian, but also Warren Smith. He was the one that went viral because of the conversation about J.K. Rowling,
Mm,
and he got
mm,
fired from his job at I think it was Emory University because he he went viral for talking to a student who was like, "Oh, she's a bigot," and da da da. And all he did was just kept asking questions. And at the end of the conversation, the kid that was being very tribal and not very nice to The thought of what J.K. Rowling is was like, I feel stupid. And he was like, you shouldn't feel stupid. We talked through this. And he got fired for that. And but at the same time, that's a great example if anybody wants to look it up. I think it's Warren Smith. I might be wrong on the last name. Uh but yeah, it's but Peter Boghossian's another good How to Have Impossible Conversations
Hmm.
is a fantastic book. It's an easy read. It's also an easy listen. So I listen to it on just drives back and forth from my to my parents' house. So it's yeah, just have dialogue, ask questions, let people talk out their own ideas.
Yeah.
And when they talk out their own ideas, they're going to come. We do that here. I I probably regret. We've got 404 episodes or whatever,
Hmm.
and I probably regret 30% of anything I've said on this microphone. But I also listen to our episodes not out of narcissism, but out of how can I improve?
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that way. Or, oh, I made a good point there. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is why we do this. This is why it's
Mhm.
important to have, and why you have brought up the terrifying statistic of youngsters the percentage of youngsters who say they don't have a close friend,
Yeah.
because we
Mhm.
think out loud together all the time, not just here when we're recording, when we're texting back and forth, when we're fishing, whatever. I'm constantly back and forth with my wife of, I think this, how should I phrase this? Is this the right way to say that? Is there a better way to express this? So much of when I come on here, I have often already been thinking out loud with my wife because she thinks differently than I do.
Mhm.
Even if we agree on something, we very often get there from a different route.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
important.
even in relationships with my friends and my wife and my family and everything, I've been okay about saying, "Wow, that text I sent you, I shouldn't have said that."
Mm,
That's yeah, that was pretty harsh of me, or I overreacted there, or you know what, I got that thing wrong. And that's the hardest thing in the English language to say is I was wrong.
mhm.
And so just practice that. That should be part of Martha. I hope that's part of Martha Beck's book is practicing acknowledging when you got things wrong. And we do that. We do that. It's on YouTube. You can see it. We've got some things wrong. Uh, Not my football predictions. My football predictions are coming true. Denver is pretty freaking awesome, and the Texans have the best defense in the league. Those were correct. Now Washington is disappointing me, so I have to say that one I got wrong. But also they lost their starting
A lot of
quarterback.
injuries there. A lot of
Yeah,
injuries.
yeah. But no, it is. So one of the deeper points coming out of this whole long thing we did today was, gosh, just think deeply for a second. Jason, you're very, very, very well versed, and I love the synthesis. Uh, I'm curious about this Owen Cook guy because of what you said. So I'm probably gonna dive into that right now. Uh, but yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody,
All
for
right.
those that celebrate it. And I'm about to make a bomb ass turkey. And hey, I was at a Friendsgiving last night, and they trusted me with the gravy, which is like the biggest pressure you can have
Mm-hmm.
in a bringing together gathering. So, but I got it, hit it just
Nailed it.
right,
All right.
nailed it.
All right. We'll see y'all next time.
All right, later.